So welcome all of you, many members of the media, print, online, television, radio, and all the rest. We have members of staff of the Central Bank of Kenya. We have, trying to look and see whether I have any MPC members. I don't seem to see them, but anyway, we have people from here. And obviously joined by the governor who's hosting us this morning and the deputy governor. Now, I want to just set the rules for those of you who have not been here in a while. We were here last Tuesday, but I know some of you have not been here for quite a while. Here's how it's going to work. And I want us to listen, please, carefully. The governor is going to speak all the way through. No interruptions whatsoever. He just makes his statement. After he makes his statement, we will then come to Q&A, i.e. question and answer. But today I actually want to set very strict rules. We are here to discuss the issues of the new generation currency banknotes. And obviously, if anyone wants to ask about the coins that were launched on December the 11th, that's still okay as well. But no other issue. Every other issue that we had, I believe many of you are here on Tuesday, and there's nothing that we restricted, and we don't usually restrict it in the post-MPC press conference. And this was just 6 days ago. So I think a lot of the issues that you wanted handled then to do with anything and everything, I think those were handled. Today is quite restricted in the sense of what we're going to speak about for many reasons. One, we want to stick to the subject at hand. And secondly, as you must understand, with the announcement that was made on Saturday, today is an extremely busy day for everyone trying to make sure that everything happens, and I believe the governor will address that as well. So if you're agreed on those rules that the governor speaks all the way through, we will come to Q&A and we'll do it the usual way that we do it. Everyone will have a chance to ask if in case you need to ask, but it's restricted only to the issue of the new generation currency, both notes and coins. If you agree to that, Governor, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, members of the press, and indeed fellow citizens. Today, we gather to discuss and to give you more information about the new currency that was launched on Saturday, June 1, and came into existence by means of Gazette notice on May 31, 2019. Obviously, this is a major milestone for the country, the financial sector, and indeed CBK. It's actually a milestone by extension for every one of us, every Kenyan, and we should be proud of this moment. So later on in the presentation, I will ask that the banknotes be brought to you. They are already in circulation. They are already in circulation. I repeat that. They are already in circulation. And I would want you to see some of them and for you to actually see them as they are. You can feel them and so forth. The points to make are as follows. First, this involved a long process. I would actually add the word arduous in this long and arduous process. And we have followed all the applicable laws to get to this point. And in terms of the quality of the notes, we have tried also listening to the public. We've tried to put together a set of notes that we'll be proud of. We've also listened to the population. As you know, we actually did public, we involved the public in the designs of the notes and the various features on it. The coins, if you recall, had the pictures of or had images depicting our wildlife. And in the case of these banknotes, they are depicting various elements of our activity, economic activity, and aspects of things that relate to our prosperity, economic prosperity. So we have green energy, we have agriculture, we have tourism, We have, I've forgotten the other one. And also we have governance. These are actually, the other one was sports, I'm sorry. How could I forget that? How could I forget that? So those are, that's what has been depicted on it, on the back side of the notes. On the front side of the notes, one of the images that is there is really of the Kenyatta International Conference Center. It actually is something that all of us find recognizable. And in my words, when we launched this is iconic, the building, and I think everyone in the entire country recognizes that structure. I think we all know how those of us that come to Nairobi the first time, the first thing they want to see is Kenyatta International Conference Center and take their pictures there, because it is part of our sort of landmarks in our country. There are other images. For instance, there's an image of a dove at the front, which again symbolizes peace. There are images of animals coming through the numbers, and the big five, as I explained during the launch. So in sum, the design of the notes has satisfied every applicable law. It has satisfied public participation. We got a lot of ideas. For instance, as I have said before, one of the ideas from the public was to make the notes more accessible to visually impaired persons. And consistent with that, if you look at the notes, you'll see there are certain elements that make it much more accessible. There are certain bars that allow that sort of feeling of what the note is. There's also the numbers are raised, also at least to give it distinction, and also the writing of the name Kenya and so forth. Now, those are not the only features, but I wanted to assure you, members of the public, members of the press, that this was an effort that was thorough, followed the law, and indeed successful at the end. So right here, I would want to thank everyone who was involved in this. First and foremost, the population, by giving us their ideas and also giving us time to deal with the issues that came up. I also want to thank the other supporting, let's say, those that supported us going forward, other parts of the governance structure. And finally, of course, I want to thank our own central bank staff that have worked tirelessly. I would even say many long nights here in the central bank, or long days, and have done the entire process with remarkable precision and accuracy, and indeed with utmost discretion. So that's what I want to say about that, and you'll see the notes as we complete the presentation. In terms of the way forward, we'll continue to release the new banknotes to all the banks, all banks and microfinance institutions. Of course, at this moment, if you go to a bank, what you'll find is they'll probably have stocks that were there last Friday, meaning not the new banknotes, but very soon they'll be in every single banking hall, or rather bank branch, every single microfinance branch. And I think the point is this is expected to work as well, sort of seamlessly. Would also say that an element that needs to be, that is now in high gear, is the element of public awareness. That has really kicked into high gear, and explaining to the public the various elements. You've seen, for instance, we've been making a campaign in the media both print, TV, and very soon radio as well. So it is important that this information gets to the deepest corners of our republic, to every single person that is within our borders. There's also some other work that needs to be done, but those are technical issues. Banks need to recalibrate their counting machines and all those other things, but that is, that is work. That's par for the course. There's no concern about those considerations. So I think in a nutshell, it is important to appreciate that milestone and also appreciate that this is something that we should be very proud of as a nation, very proud of as a citizen of this country, and obviously very proud of if you have been associated with this particular project. That said, and you would probably agree with me, that yes, a lot of people have been very pleased with this. The population, in terms of the people you interviewed and others in the newspapers yesterday and elsewhere, and indeed even today on the various media outlets and so forth, there's been a lot of support and joy and gratitude for achieving this milestone. Those, I think, are important to appreciate. Those are the sentiments of the people that have been expressed. That said, yes, there are other elements that don't see it that way, and obviously believe that things may have not been done in that way, that process. And there are some that have made the claim that they do want to get their own assurances that the process was done correctly, and that's fine. I think it's fine for people to make those questions, but I think the point here is that we need to move ahead with the things even as we answer those questions. In particular, one of the reasons I was late just now is that we've just a legal challenge has just been filed in one of the courts, and we have to deal with that. We are not waiting for it. We think this is more than just an inconvenience. It is something that we wouldn't call for, but so be it. We are obviously willing to deal with those issues in a matter of urgency. Matter of urgency. There's nothing worse than having uncertainty with regard to the currency. Nothing worse. Because every one of us uses that currency day in, day out. So it is important for every single Kenyan to have that assurance, and this is why we would want those matters to be dealt with due urgency, with due haste. Now I want to go to the next part, which is the Gazette notice that was also the second Gazette notice that was issued on May 31, withdrawing the currency. That is, withdrawing the shillings 1,000 banknotes that were prior to the new generation banknotes. I called it in my speech the 1,000 shillings old series banknotes. So this is really distinguishing them again with the new generation ones. The new generation ones remain, and you'll get a chance to look at them in a minute. But anything issued that's just the 1,000, not the others, just the 1,000 Kenya shilling banknotes, those have been withdrawn. And the Gazette notice indicates that they will cease to be legal tender on October 1, 2019. So that is the clarity of the Gazette notice. It is true that there are those that claim that we had no right to withdraw the currency, and I think we will have that moment in court. The point is that we have always had that right, and we have used it in the past. So this isn't the first time we are using it. So I think we will make our claims. We'll make our argument in court because this is just part of our normal operation, part of our currency management, of which we have complete independence. So that is something that is enshrined in the Constitution, but I think the arguments will be heard in court. So we've made this withdrawal of currency. What was behind it? I think in the speech I mentioned that there were two reasons, principal reasons. The first is to deal with the illicit financial flows that we have seen. The second is to deal with counterfeits that have begun to emerge. The illicit financial flows, one of you asked me recently, we have the numbers. Now, I would add that, I would say that it would be a bit heroic for those that are engaged in illegal activity to tell the central bank what the activity is. You understand, right? What is their volume? It doesn't quite work that way. But sure, there are estimates, but and we in the central bank don't have estimates of that. We don't do that. But I think there are a lot of people there that deal with. There's actually even an institution that deals with the illicit financial flows, and they have their estimates. But I would rather look at something else. You have seen some of the cases that have been coming through in terms of illicit flows, illicit transactions. You've also seen, things related to, let's say, I would say odd transactions. You can call them fake gold or whatever else it is. And there's always a second leg of that transaction, which is the flow of the cash, of the finances. So you do have a good estimate of some of it. And at the end of the day, you don't need to have an overall picture. You don't have to be very precise. All you know is iko shida. And the iko shida is enough for you to act. If the iko shida is not enough, then we have a problem. I guess the point is you don't wait until the house is really burning before you use the fire extinguisher. When you begin to smell smoke, grab that fire extinguisher and begin to deal with it. Okay? So that's really what I want to say about the illicit financial flows. The point also is they are not just in Kenya. They are also in our neighboring countries. In effect, Kenyan currency, the Kenyan shilling, is the regional US dollar. Meaning the way, say, around the world, you have people that, you can use the US dollar, at least for the most part, and you can use it even for paying taxes and other transactions like that. Well, the Kenya shilling actually has similar, let's say, the acceptance. Not just in the East African community area, but also wider, beyond those East African community boundaries. And so it is therefore important to make sure that our currency is not tainted by those illicit financial flows. Now, why the illicit financial flows are becoming more problematic now, I don't know. That's for others to write the history, or for that matter, papers and all those other things. The point here is that yes, this is something that is emerging, and iko shida. Therefore, we need to deal with it quickly and conclusively. There's another trend, which is counterfeits. This had not been there, and again, I would say that the Kenyan currency has many security features that have yet been dealt with, if you understand what I'm saying here. So actually, the counterfeits that we have seen recently, and you have reported it quite widely in your outlets, has been kind of very poor. But that's not the point. The point, you can see the intention of these people. Clearly, they can see there's something there. So I think the point here is we have to deal with them conclusively. And this is the reason, the second reason for this measure of withdrawing the older series 1,000 shilling banknotes. Now, having said that, some of you are concerned that, and they have heard a lot about what happened in India and wonder, will we have a similar problem? The point is, we need to learn from the experiences of others. And I would want to submit that we actually looked at the matter in India, why things went the way they went. Meaning, what are the learning points? What are maybe the mistakes that they made from a perspective of the outcomes? It's true there are significant effects, long lines, long lines, the economy actually shrunk, or rather the growth rate came down precipitously. But I think the point here is that we had, if you may, there are some points we learned from them, and I want to repeat from this. By the way, it's not unusual to have demonetization. Maybe India is the most famous example, but there are other examples, and I would actually mention two. Well, actually, I'll mention three. There is the example of Zimbabwe some time ago, where they demonetized their own currency and actually ended up going to the rand, US dollar, euro, and that's the currencies that they were using at the time. But they demonetized, they withdrew their own currency. This obviously was trying to deal with more fundamental issues. I won't go into the history of it. You know the history as much as I do. There was also the demonetization of the other, let's say, other European currencies at the time of the euro, when the euro was introduced. And obviously we can talk about the D-mark as an exception in many ways. But I think the point is they demonetized the lira, the Spanish peseta, and all those other things. I think, again, we know why that was the case. I just, again, want to insist that demonetization is not something that is, it's a tool of central banking. It's a tool like any other that has to be used correctly. There's also the example of actually Kenya. We demonetized at the end of 2011. For instance, you know, the 5 shilling note is not valid today, i.e. we demonetized it, we withdrew it. So there are many examples, but I think I want to leave those with you. What are the lessons that we learned from the Indian experience? First is that they decided to demonetize immediately, meaning the announcement was made and immediately the currency could not be used for transactions, meaning it ceased to be legal tender upon announcement. Now, you can imagine what happened. Let's say you're a truck driver. You're moving from point A to point B, and you stopped for lunch at a particular place, and then it gets demonetized, and that's all you have. I mean, you have problems about your lunch. You have problems about where you're going to buy your fuel because you don't have money to continue. So you can imagine what happened then. And the next instant was, I need to change this because they gave you 50 days to transact that, to change your now non-legal tender to a new bill which would have been legal tender. Try to go to a bank, but they didn't have the currency. So there was a shortage, you understand, because it takes time to do some of these things. So you can already see what was the decision would lead to some serious crisis. And that's really what happened. So, and this is why we have allowed a sort of a period where the transactions will continue. You can continue to transact, but at a particular time, October 1, it will cease to be legal tender. Now, there is a question that has come up, but Governor, why did you give them 4 months? You're being too generous. Why not do it in a month or in a week? And I think that question is valid. The answer is simple. There is a balance that we have to strike. And this relates, for instance, to our people, Wanjiku. Think of your Shosho, right? And maybe when you visited her, you felt really generous and you gave her 5 crisp $1,000, not dollar, 1,000 shilling banknotes. And she's been keeping them and all those other things. You see, she doesn't go to the bank. She's not like you and me in terms of going to the local bank all the time and all those other things. And it will take time for the information to filter to her. The point is, if you were too aggressive and brought it and closed that too quickly, you'd have a very onerous task, or rather you'd put a lot of pressure on the Wanjiko, the common person who is actually doing the right thing and actually has no concerns in terms of illicit flows or counterfeits and things like that. So in effect, the people who will be punished the most will not just be the crooks. The ones that are punished the most actually will be the shoshos and our people who are at a different level. So this is why we need to have it, we had this balance and hope that it is a correct balance, you know. And obviously there's judgment there, and our judgment was that was a balance, we could strike it there. So the second thing, as I said, in terms of lessons, was that there wasn't enough cash in ATMs, and there were long lines and things like that. So it is important for us to make sure that the currency is available in all the banks. And our intention is, in a matter of days, it should be available in every single bank outlet, i.e. every single branch in the country. That is our intention. And I think we can get to it. We can get to it. Then the other thing is the issue of having a strong AML-CFT framework. Strong AML-CFT framework. The point is that those that are involved in illicit transactions, illicitly acquired cash, should find it very difficult, i.e. impossible, to get the money in the banking system, or even to bring it, to convert it into new generation banknotes. So we need to maintain that strong framework, which was one of the things that I think we also learned from the Indian experience. We believe we have a very strong AML-CFT framework. And just to be clear, I have just spoken this morning to the CEOs and operators, chief operation officers of our commercial banks, of our microfinance bank. I will talk this afternoon, maybe after this presentation, I'm not sure when, with the foreign exchange bureaus. Yes, the FX bureaus are part of this. I'll also talk to the money remittance providers, or the PSPs. That's the payment service providers as well. And we'll also, well, so that is to make sure that all that is dealt with. I'll also be communicating with our sister central banks around us and explaining to them what we are doing, and we need their cooperation. You do not want to have money going to other jurisdictions in order to return back to this jurisdiction. And it is their business to make sure that their jurisdiction is clean. So in a sense, we are offering a public service to other jurisdictions as well. And I think it's important to appreciate that. We, as a fraternity of central banks, are quite tight. So it doesn't take much to help each other. And this is something that is obviously helpful to all of us. We'll be talking further to other jurisdictions, meaning jurisdictions that actually have been through ports of various transactions from Kenya or into Kenya, so that they too raise their alertness of any flows that is destined or leaving our country. So in a sense, we need to corner those that have been involved in illicit flows and deal with it in that way. The last point I wanted to make about this is the communications. We need, in the case of India, we also learned that they could have done better on the communication. I have learned more and more how important communication is for central banking. And this is one more thing. It is extremely important. So we'll be communicating, and later today we'll be issuing a press release that will cover some elements of how the process of demonetization will take place. But I think the point here is we need to be in touch with you so that we can also communicate to the public, members of the public, in quickly, and for them to feel that the process is not onerous, and at the same time it's targeted correctly, rather than sort of having a high cost to all of us, meaning it to be risk-based. Wanjiko isn't so much of a risk, but maybe other persons, of people with larger transactions are more of a risk because of the nature of their business or whatever else it is. So I want to leave that there and then now mention a few details about how the process will take place. And I think with that we'll probably be done with this. Basically, according to the Gazette notice, the transactions will take place, meaning in terms of conversion of your 1,000 banknotes that you have, 1,000 Kenya shillings banknotes, the older ones, and you want to transact and get the new ones. Of course, it has to be clear that you can still deposit things, right, as before. There's no problem. So you can make a deposit transaction as if at your bank. The usual rules or regulations about banking applies. So even in the jargon, even things relating to KYC, that is know your customer, will apply. KYC is know your customer. I'm sorry, I'm using jargon again. So basically, in the same way, when you make a deposit, the bank needs to appreciate what you're doing, and you need to explain to them if you're making a large transaction and all those other things. So that obviously applies. And the same will apply in general terms. And I say in general terms because, well, actually, in precise terms with one exception, or two exceptions that I'll mention later. So if you want to have a transaction over the counter to get your to convert your old 1,000s to new 1,000s or new generation 1,000s, the same sort of banking requirements will generally apply. But now I want to go through it systematically so that you can understand what the exceptions are. First, persons who have who want to exchange the old notes of a value not exceeding 1 million, they can do that in their own bank. So you can go to your own bank and just have the conversion. They'll deal with you as your customer the same way. So that is not changed. I hope we understand each other on that one. So you can go to your bank and it'll deal with it. Now, of course, there are a lot of other people that don't have bank accounts. Think of the shosho I talked about a moment ago. Well, they can take their money to any branch, any bank, or even the central bank and central bank branches. And they will then have their money converted with they need to leave their details, ID, and very little confirmation that it's their money and all those other things, nothing beyond that, right? Very little. We understand each other. That for amounts less than 1 million, you can go to your bank, but if you don't have a bank, then you can go to any banking institution, any branch of a banking institution, and they will assist you in the transaction. That, I think, is clear. The second one is for amounts between 1 million and 5 million, converting that to new bills, new banknotes, you will need to go to your own bank. So you need to go to your own bank. They know you. After all, you are their customer, and they know what line of business you are. So it is an easy sort of transaction. They'll ask the usual questions. You'll sign the usual declarations in terms of the amounts and things like that. But it is no different from actually making a deposit. So from your perspective, it's exactly the same thing, only that you are now getting banknotes as opposed to making a deposit. So that is clear, between 1 million to 5 million. However, we have a few people, traders, that maybe don't have a bank account. These are very few, and have an amount above, let's say, 1 million. And we are talking 1 million in 1,000, in 1,000s, right? Old 1,000s. So they've gotten to that point, and they have more than 1 million in the old banknotes. What will they do? Well, what they need to do is to contact the central bank. They need to contact the central bank. And we will work with them, understand what they're involved in, understand who they are, understand how they made their money, really understand them. And then after we are done with that, we will endorse and work with them to get their money at their nearest branch, or you may say I'm talking of commercial bank branch, because you can imagine we don't have a place in Moyale or Kikerok or other place like that. And it is not that we want that customer to come all the way to Nairobi or to Meru or Mombasa. So we can, once we've done that, we will work with that customer and agree on where they would want to get their money, and then we'll just work with that branch, in a sort of a secure way, and say, this person, you can actually provide this amount to them, blah, 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 upon our endorsement. And that then we'll sort ourselves out with the bank later. I think we understand that. So what about exchanging of amounts exceeding 5 million? Actually, that's very simple. All you need to do, if you have amounts above 5 million, is to contact the central bank. And they will deal with you, as I have explained a moment ago. And then upon completion of that, endorse the transfer or endorse the conversion in a particular, in your bank, as is easy for you, and so forth. The point, though, is that we have looked at the 5 million and wondered, how many people make transactions of cash of more than 5 million or have this? And actually, we've seen there are very few. It's amazing. We probably hear of the few extreme cases, and the extremes are extremes. I think we understand what I'm saying. People with hundreds of millions of cash. There are not that many. And we've looked at the transactions. So think of the transactions that take place that are above 10 million or 5 million. Actually, it's a very small fraction. It's a very small fraction compared to all the other transactions, cash transactions that take place. So we believe it's not such an arduous task. There will be some that have huge volumes, but in terms of numbers, it's not a large set of numbers, or you could say that it is an excessively large set of numbers in terms of people who are in that category. So we believe it will be okay, meaning if we've scaled it at the right level, the transactions will not be onerous for those that have small transactions, the Wanjikos we talked about, the Shoshos, the small trader, the institutions that have, could even think about schools, for instance. Schools have have bank accounts. But all this will happen in a straightforward way, in a way that does not cause the chaos that I talked about that maybe we learned from other countries when they did this. I'll be giving you the number later, but I think what I would say is we'll be issuing a press release after this, maybe to take half an hour, and then it will have the telephone number, but it will be exactly explaining this. I want to finish, but I want to finish by making one comment. First, this is something in terms of the launch of the currency. It's something that all of us should be proud of. It's something that I think every single one of us as Kenyans should feel relief that we've made it to this point, but also the element of, it's an important milestone. Secondly, in terms of the withdrawal of currency, in terms of dealing with these illicit flows and counterfeits, this is a matter of national importance. This is a matter of national security, meaning it is important for us to see that we are doing this in order to deal with prospective problems that would jeopardize our way of life in terms of our commerce, in terms of our transactions and security, and indeed you could even say our own respect as Kenyans. We definitely want to be proud as Kenyans when we wear our colors, when people talk about our nation. I mean, every one of us wants to feel that this is something that we are proud of. And I think we cannot be proud of it if indeed there's an element that, let's say, that pulls us back, that tarnishes our pride in this way. The last point I wanted to make here is that, yes, I've made it really. All other transactions will continue as before. And I think the one other element I need to insist on is a communication. We'll step up our communications. We have Wallace here, we have you, and we have ourselves. And I think it's our responsibility to reach out and explain to the population how things are. I'll also be meeting with some of let's say, the leaders in your sector, so as to understand how we can work together to explain this process and give it the confidence that it deserves. Thank you. I'll now take your questions. What's it? Oh, the notes. Oh. See, Wallace pushes me around. Now he wants to show you the notes. Okay. So you have the notes here, and that's where they are. And also I want to fan them on this way. Yeah. And also again on this side. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm behind this forest. Why don't we have one? Consolidate. And you can decide who does what. So one day it will be, whoever. Okay. So that's the note. All right. And then I'll show you, I'll find the other one as well. Now, whoops, this is getting a bit more complicated. I've never played cards, so I don't know how to find these things. That's there. Oops, there we go. All right. And then we'll have, he's slow. What's wrong with you? Did you get it? Okay, then the other side. Let's find the other side. So who has any Kenyan bill? Any other older bill? Wallace, you have one? Anybody?
I never have money.
Oh yeah, there it is. This is nice. You think I'll give it back to you? What's that? No, you won't get the new one. I wanted to do something. No, it's okay. I have his.
Oh, you have money?
No, I have his.
You have 500?
No, I don't want a 500. Keep your money. So I wanted to do something else, which is to show you the comparison. You see what I mean? In terms of size. You can hear it, you can tell you millimeters and all that, right? This is 100. Yeah, but, okay, fine. So we do the 100s. Fine. So you just want me to compare 50 and 50? Who has a 50? You good? Are we okay? Okay, who has a 50? Okay, we have you. Who has a 50? And who has a 1,000? Okay,
500.
500. Let's do 500. We get it? Are we okay? This is just comparison of size. And then we'll probably get somebody's wallet, but that's okay. Maybe not just as yet.
Mr. Nyong was 1,000 actually.
Okay, let's first deal with him. Oh yeah, here's a 50. Thank you. Thank you. So you have until October 1. Get your KYC ready. But if I may, let me ask you, colleagues, we are making these photos, but make sure they are not misused. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Okay. And then what else? We already did this. Here we go. Yeah. So here we go. So there we go. So you see that? What? Is it again? Oh. Like this? I'm not good at this. I told you I never played cards. So, just to show you, or the other way. Well, just wait, it just dies. Is that okay? Just to show the comparison. But that was one of the things that in the public discussions, when we went to the public, they talked about smaller bills. And we believe that this fits in your wallet, as the president demonstrated. And so that's one. The other thing, just to show you some things on it, some features. There are three things you need to remember: touch, guza, tazama, look, and pindua, tilt. So just to show you some of the things. So in terms of touch, if you look at the numbers, if you touch the numbers, they are elevated. You can feel they are not flat. Kenya as well, right? It's there. You will get the brochure. And you'll also have the various elements, watermarks, as it were, the thread. And when you tilt it, you'll see the thread changes color. You'll also see the buffalo, the animal more clearly. So there are many features like this. I'm not going to go through all of them. But we believe that it is an improvement over the other bills that we have, or other banknotes that we have, and indeed over banknotes that we have had around the region. In terms of, it's still paper, it's not polymer. Now, there are some of you that are very far ahead and they'll say, why didn't you do plastic? Plastic, actually, that was considered, but in fact, because of the way we handle currency, paper currency, plastic wouldn't work. And I would encourage you to read about the experience of our brothers. I believe it was in Zambia, where they introduced, it may be Malawi, I'm not sure which of the two countries, it was Malawi, where they introduced it and actually after a period of time had to withdraw it because of the way we handle it. Our handling of currency, most of us don't, I mean, most of the mamambogas, do they have a nice wallet? So you hold this thing and so that's why we thought that this is better. But that said, we will continue to push on the clean currency policy, meaning in terms of a lot of complaints about the 50 shilling notes. And we know that because we were running short of the 50 shilling. As you know, we ended up getting delayed in this process because of court hurdles and things like that. And obviously, that put our planning out of kilter. And that's why we had those 50s that were really dirty. But our objective, obviously, is to pull them back as ASAP. And that obviously should work quite well. Questions, colleagues?
So everyone also asked a question. Just a quick clarification. The reason why we are taking the currency back is we'll have a much more organized way of you engaging with them. It may even happen immediately the governor finishes speaking, but we need to do it very properly, including things like serial numbers and things like that. So if you could please be patient, we'll make all those arrangements. I think we have enough photographs of the governor. Hold on, Duncan. Relax. We have enough photographs of the governor handling the currency. So here's how we're going to do the Q&A. As usual, for the guys who have been here, you know how we do it, but for those who have not been here for a while, you will please raise your hand. I will then select you, so please don't pass the microphones back and forth. And once the microphone gets to you, please stand up, say your name and the institution, and then ask your question. Because of the volume of questions, I've already seen at least 15 hands up. Please ask only one question, if you may, not part A, B, and C. And secondly, if you're able to avoid a question that's been asked before, please do so. Thank you. So I'll start with Mosoku. How many hands on this side? So one, and then right there at the back, I'll give you this microphone, and then come to this side with that crowd of guys over there.
Thank you. My name is Geoffrey Mosoku from The Standard. Bonakapana, we know that some Kenyans have gone to court, and we don't intend to discuss because the matter is now in court, but just a general clarification, especially to the public who have raised issues with the use of KICC, which clearly shows the image or the picture of the founding president of the Republic of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta, the late Jomo Kenyatta. Is it by default that what is more constant in all the currency notes that you have issued have that image and do not interchange, just like the face of that other notes, the face of the notes? Number two, just one. Do we have like a specific number or the value of the money that the 1,000 shillings note, the one you want to withdraw?
Okay, fine. From behind you, then we'll go to Jimmy on that side. Take three on that side and next number.
Okay, I'm Haimba from Ebro TV. My question is actually derived from, that is now section 34 of the 6th schedule that says that
section
nothing 34 of the 6th schedule, which says
what schedule are you talking about, my friend?
The Constitution.
Oh, you'd never said that.
Yeah, nothing can actually impair the validity of the money that is already in circulation. So you have actually withdrawing the 1,000, but maybe according to the Constitution, don't you think that you are actually breaching the law?
Sounds good. What else?
Jimmy on that side is 3 hands, I think.
Good afternoon, Governor. Jimmy Mbogo, K24. Quick one. So the first question is with regards to the issue of the money that is already in the market. What happened with the coins? Apparently there was a circular that you sent out to all banks saying that directing that no customer should be given more than 100 shillings worth of the new coins. Is that the same case with the new notes? And number two.
One, please. One. Pass the microphone in front of you. Or you, yeah, since you have it, you can ask and then.
Brenda Kerubo from KTN News. What if I don't want to give my money to the banks, to the commercial banks? I could spend it.
Yeah.
Are you worried about inflation in relation to this? Because I could put my money into property, I can buy cars. Are you worried about this?
Pass the microphone on that side. Do not, please hold on, Duncan. Please let's follow the rules if you don't mind. All of you will ask your questions.
My name is Faisal Ahmed from Citizen TV.
Yeah.
One question, Bona Governor.
Please hold the microphone closer.
Are there maybe surveillance teams at various financial institutions that are currently in place to survey if there are individuals who flock money to the banks, forex exchange institutions, and even try and send money back into the country?
All right, okay. The gentleman behind you, then we'll have Duncan.
Hi, my name is Edwin Okoth from Nation.
I didn't get your name.
Edwin Okoth.
Yes, please hold the microphones closer.
My name is Edwin Okoth from Nation.
From Nation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Edwin.
First question is on your speech during the Madaraka Day. You mentioned that some cereals had been observed not to be in circulation, and that's why we were introducing the replacement, so that some cereals of the old notes were probably not in circulation. Old cereals, that's what you...
Why don't you quote my speech? Why don't you...
Yeah, I've just been checking.
Why don't you quote it? Because I don't remember saying that.
Let me paraphrase my question then. I'm trying to talk about...
Did I state it or did I not state it?
It's about old cereals not circulating.
Edwin, you say that I said something.
Yes.
I challenge you. Is it in my speech? Yes or no?
Yes.
It's not. Okay, then.
I watched it on TV.
No, you have it. Could you... Anybody has
we could drop that if you don't want me to.
It's not that I care about it. My only question is, let's tell the truth.
Yes.
If I didn't say it, then I didn't say it, and you can confirm because that speech was put on on our website within 5 minutes of my speech, and it's there. I didn't bring it, so it's up to you. It's up to you. Figure out how to deal with it.
Yes, but the point I'm trying to make is that there was an observation that the older series of the 1,000 shillings note was not in circulation. And so to bring it into circulation, this ban was necessary. I don't know whether, I might not get exactly the words you used, but I'm trying to also to gauge then how much are we talking about of this series that probably were not in circulation.
Okay.
And lastly,
No, one question, please. Please pass the mic to Duncan, if you don't mind. Immediately on your left.
Sorry, you'll excuse me. I'll ask three quick ones,
one.
Just so we can understand the context.
Duncan, one.
Right,
Right,
Governor. I've had a number of businessmen and investors asking why, given the magnitude of the black economy in this country, an amnesty wasn't considered. Tell people to bring in illicit money and no questions asked. Any comments around that? There's been a feeling that this crackdown on illicit flows is having a sort of a negative impact on economic activity and that kind of thing. Thank you.
Okay, here we are. So first question was Geoffrey's questioning, and also I think the next question, I forget who it was. But in any event, questioning the portrait according to him. And the point is simple. The legal basis for that is in the Constitution. And the Constitution is the wording of it. I hate to put it this way because everybody argues that their understanding of something is very clear. And we went through this some time ago. We want to submit that we have followed the Constitution, not just by mistake, but completely as it should have been. So I'm taking those 2 points together. The design of the coins, of the banknotes, or indeed of the currency of our country, is constrained some by the Constitution and also the process. And we did both. So we follow the Constitution, and so I would submit that it is not in contravention. And now you may say that you are reading of the Constitution and reading of whatever else is in another way. So my point is, yes, that's fine. We will deal with it in court if it has to come to that. But I hope that I'll convince you in the courts, if that's what it is, that we did the right thing, that actually it is not in contravention. So I would want to leave those two questions in that way. Jimmy was asking about the coins, the experience of the coins in terms of having a limit. You have to appreciate that the coins was an interesting period, right? Meaning people needed to feel the coins, to touch them and so forth. And this was the first time we introduced a new generation currency. So it was more important that people first get them quickly. And the limit in those first few days, it was actually less than a week, was so that we can actually put it out there much more quickly, so that people can see them. You understand? And there was a lot of excitement. You all know that. As a matter of fact, I met some of you after the launch, and you wanted to get your own set of coins. So that was really the reason. But as you also know, despite what was said by others, in a few days we actually began, we advised banks that there was now enough around the country, and so they were now much more at liberty. So I think the point is that was the reason for doing that. We don't expect to have any limits like that. I think we have enough time to deal with the circulation to the bank. So that's not something we expect to be. It will take some time, though, to recalibrate some of the machines, and in particular the ATMs. So the ATMs may continue for a little longer spewing or putting out the old generation banknotes, which obviously will remain valid, including the 1000s will remain valid until October 1, even as the others continue to be legal currency. So I'm just saying that there's a bit of work to be done in that area, but I think we all can understand where we are. That is the answer for Jimmy. Brenda is asking about using the money that one may have to spend and all that. Well, definitely until October 1, you can do all that. But I think the point here is that the AML CFT framework remains in place. So if you want to buy property, you do need to provide information, and so you can no longer sort of show up with a suitcase of currency and sort of buy whatever you want to buy. It doesn't happen that way now. Now maybe you've seen a few transactions like that, but let's be clear, those are the sort of transactions that are suspicious, as we call them, and they need to be caught in particular ways. We are not the only ones that deal with this, and this is also in answer to Faisal's question about surveillance and things like that. We are not the only ones. It's not the central bank that takes care of all this. Other institutions are in place and do their work. I'm talking of the other investigative agencies and all those other things. They don't report to us. They have their work to do. So I think the point here is that if indeed you spend it and buy things, if it is done in a licit way, or these are all licit transactions and proper and all that, that's not a problem. But at the end of the day, somebody will be holding that 1,000 shilling bill, and he or she will need to move it into the system in a particular way. And at that point, that's why they need to prove that hakuna shida, if you understand what I'm saying before. Edwin was asking about an observation. So I really cannot comment on other people's observations. I don't know where Edwin is. Is it you? You are Edwin.
How much?
No, I don't know about the how much. I'll just say that these observations that the reason we are doing X is because of Y. I hope I can tell you that I cannot argue against those sort of things. Meaning, if you see that there's some conspiracy in everything we do, then I cannot help you. I've already explained why is it that we are doing what we are doing. So it's you to figure out who is telling the truth. Okay. Duncan asked about amnesty and things like that. Amnesty doesn't belong to us. It doesn't belong to us. You can go talk to KRA, you can go talk to others. At the end of the day, we have to do what we have to do. And if people, you have to set yourself forward and see whether this country, whether this economy would be driven by illicit flows. That's the question. Today now we sit here pretty and sort of say, well, okay, fine, I'm getting my salary at the end of the day or at the end of the month and things like that. To be different if we are sitting here and sort of wondering who you're going to, let's say, to swindle next. And you're worried about all those swindlers that are around you, all those illicit flows. So the question is, will this country become a country of thieves, transactors of illicit flows, transactors of commodity, that sort of get-rich stuff? Is that what we want to found our country on? I mean, I would submit it's not. And I would submit, well, let's look at our national anthem. It doesn't talk about that sort of quick win kind of phenomena. So I think the point here is appreciate better what is it that we are doing and really making sure that we are taking that step to clean all these illicit flows and make it clear that they go elsewhere. Let them go elsewhere. There'll be other jurisdictions that are weaker than ours, but it's our business to strengthen these jurisdictions as we see it. So that's the step, and that's why we have done exactly what we've done. Any other questions, please?
All right.
Okay, thank you. I'm Victor Madala from the Star newspaper. Maybe if you can tell us the cost of this transaction, currency transaction.
The what?
The cost of it.
Cost
At what cost are you going to effect this transaction? The transition.
Okay.
How much is it going to cost you?
Njoroge Kefa, Radio Citizen. My question is regards to demonetization and I wanted to know how much are you looking to purge from this process? And first, before that, if you would give us a number of the 1,000 shilling notes in circulation right now, and how many you are looking not to come back into the system. Thank you.
My name is Fred Dongo. I work for SME Today magazine. I needed a clarification. Just yesterday, some people were arguing about the 50 shillings note. I want to know when these other notes will cease to be legal tender. Because, a rough estimate, because I think there is confusion. They were saying that it is October 1st. I want to know about the other notes, apart from the 1,000. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone who has an ask before we come back to Jimmy and to Duncan? Okay, Jimmy, from
Governor, maybe the other thing you can address is the issue of informal exchanges, such as hawalas. What are you going to do about them? And the issue of the stability of the shillings. In terms of, we expect to see a lot of people going to bureaus to exchange the 1,000 notes. What measures are you putting in place to ensure that the shilling remains stable?
Thank you. Just a couple of two more. There's been quite a bit of debate on what this move of withdrawing 1,000 shillings, the old series after October 1st is likely to have on the economy. I don't know whether you have any expectations. Some are saying you could see a boost to the economy as people who are hiding cash under their mattresses bring it out. Secondly, one of the papers yesterday reported that this was a top secret process because we wanted to catch the crooks unawares. Is that true? Thank you.
You know, CBK doesn't work in full view of everybody. So I don't know about this top secret thing. This is the way we do business. This way, and all the other actions we've done before, even the MPC. So to term it as top secret is to, let's say, misconstrue that other things we put them out there. Maybe there are leaks all over, right, in other institutions, and so maybe that is the surprise element. But I think the point here is that, you know, we work in a particular way, and this is no different from the way we work. We have a mandate, we have to discharge the mandate, we know what we need to do, we do it, we move on. That's as simple as this. Maybe beginning with the cost of the transition. Really, in terms of the withdrawal, what has happened is it has brought forward, it has accelerated the regular withdrawal of currency. So what do I mean? Every banknote has a life, and I would encourage you to go to the museum. And in the newly renovated museum, there is actually a story about the life of a banknote, from when it's minted, when it is introduced into the economy, and when eventually it gets transacted many times, and then eventually it is withdrawn because it's completely tattered and very dirty and all those other things. And it comes back to the central bank, and we are the ones that withdraw it. So in terms of the cost, what it has done is to bring forward the, let's say, retirement of these notes. They will generally take a few years, right? And what we've done now is just to bring forward the cost, rather than let's say, defer it to a few years later when some of those bills do transact. Now, it's true the 1000s don't turn around that often. The ones that turn around very quickly are the 100s, for instance, the 50s, but more the 100s and the 200s, the 500s as well, but I would say the 200s and the 10s, and the 100s. So those turn around quite quickly. But I think the 1000s take a little longer. Their life is longer in terms of life expectancy. So I can't give you the number, but I think it's not a burden because we knew that had to happen. That's part of the mandate of the central bank. And this is what we've talked about in the context of the clean banknote policy. And that's one of the reasons why we have currency centers around the nation, around the country, to make sure that we can actually do what we are mandated to do, particularly with regard to currency management. So I hope I've answered your question. Public participation, I don't remember, the lady asked about it. I don't know where she is. So there was public participation, maybe before you and me came into this outfit. There was public participation. By the way, there's an argument that we have been sued. We were sued precisely about this, and this matter now is in the Supreme Court. That claimed that we didn't have public participation. I would only say that that is absolutely false. We did have public involvement, participation. We got very good ideas from the press, from the public. Now the moment will come, and we have announced, we've said this, we'll show you, we'll prove to you, and actually we proved it to the courts, that we actually, there were adverts that were put in the newspapers, there are people that put in their submission, there are people that we went and met. And as I said, for instance, the idea of having much more visual, more accessible bills for the visually impaired people came from that process. That's one thing. And the other, the thing about the size of the bills, that was also from the public participation process. So I think the point here is, I don't want to say you can rest assured, because you can also check your newspapers and you'll see that there was an advert back then. Unfortunately, today and now here, I wasn't ready for that question, so I cannot tell you which day or what, whether you submitted a return or submitted some ideas or whatever else it is. So I think the facts are there for all to see. And again, going back to somebody's question, maybe Duncan, unfortunately, we are at a time where we are so litigious. Everybody wants to get involved in every single piece of pie, right? And I think we understand that. And it's true, when they have a question, they have a right to an answer. And so we have said, yeah, sure, we'll answer those questions. That is not, we don't feel in any way, let's say, under pressure because of those things. But I think the answers are clear. And when the answer comes to you, then accept it. It goes back to questions that you've raised, or that corner has raised. So just to be clear then, there's a question I missed, and I thought I remembered it. So if at the end of it, I remember yours. The 50 shilling you're asking about, so the question is, maybe to repeat this. There's only one banknote or one banknote or one denomination, yes, that's a better way of putting it, one denomination that is affected by this withdrawal, and that's the 1,000. Let's begin there. All the others are not affected. All other denominations, the 50, the 100, the 200, the 500, all those are not affected. And so those remain legal tender, will remain legal tender. I mean, in the future, if we need to withdraw them for whatever reason, we'll deal with that. But as of now, this is not part of that. It's only the old series 1,000 shillings that will be withdrawn. So I hope I've made this very clear. Yeah? So no one should be worried about the other denominations. It's only the 1,000 that is affected in this, and we have clarity about the process. We want it to be we want it not to be onerous for those of us that have small amounts, and we want the other process to be straightforward and also not onerous, but in effect assure us of a smooth transition, as I explained earlier. Informal exchange, hawalas and all that, or even between you and me, I don't know who asked that question. Brenda? Oh, Jimmy, it's Jimmy again. Today you are very lucky, Jimmy. You got like 3 questions there. I don't know what happened. So informal exchanges, they apply like every other exchange. So I think the point here is that we don't have any sense of these are the ones we need to deal with and leave everything else. It cannot work that way. So the same rules apply for everybody. The same way they apply for the supermarket, the same way they apply for the petrol station and all these other things. So it's the same rules. But you can imagine, for instance, a trader who is working in a petrol station, right? I mean, it is clear what they are doing. And they can explain what the amounts are and all those other things. And by the way, the petrol station people are no longer using that much money as before. I'm talking of cash. I mean, when you fill your car, you don't go with a wad of notes, I'm sure. You use M-Pesa or whatever other platform that is appropriate for you, right? Stability of the shilling, again, this is a bit curious, but just to repeat, our exchange rate policy, but I think what question here is that if indeed there was a sense of, let's say, people having extra demand of US dollars or other foreign currency. But again, the point here is that in that transaction, you also have the regular AML CFT framework applying. As I said to you, we are not just looking to we are not looking at individuals. We are looking at specific, let's say, institutions that are charged with that responsibility anyways. We talked about banks, microfinance banks, we talked about forex bureaus, we talked about payment service providers, the money remittances as well, all of them. And indeed, we also say by extension to other people that are working to, their job is to make sure that there's, let's say, security of other transactions. Brenda was talking about purchasing properties and things like that. It's all that put together. That's how we'll be, and you also working in your area to bring out those cases that are a bit egregious. of particular people caught in the airport with things in their socks or whatever else it is, or people trying to do, trying to push the envelope in particular ways. So I think that is more what I would say rather than worry about the stability. So there was a question earlier about how much we have in terms of value and in terms of, or that is still out there. So in all, we have the equivalent of so we have 261.9 billion value in terms of our currency, right? Yeah, so it is 261.9 billion. That's the value of the currency. And if you look at the 1000s, you have, maybe now we should talk about units. Why don't we just talk about how many pieces of paper are out there? That's probably what you're asking. Is that what you're asking? Okay, so in terms of the 1000s, you have 217.6, those are million pieces out there. In terms of the 500, it's 30.8 million pieces. 200s, you have the 54.8 million. 100s, you have 126.4 million. 50, you have 100.5 million pieces. And the 20, which is still out there somewhere, has 9.9 million pieces. So I hope that those numbers are what you have to. What else, Wallace?
Impact of the economy, could we see a boost?
I don't know. I don't know about that. Actually, the issue for me is, I thought I answered that actually. The issue for me is that we need to look at the long term. We need to look at the long term. It isn't a sort of one-to-one relationship, in my view. Because, and I think even if we had to lose growth.
No, sorry, I'm talking about a boost in people taking
I know. I know what you're saying. Your boost would only come if you actually have, let's say, more money coming into the economy. That's what you're saying. Out of my mattress and actually into the economy. That's what you're saying. Yeah. And that's my point. That I'm not very excited about any potential boost. I actually value it at zero. Because if it is money that is illicit, it shouldn't be with us. It's poisonous money. This is blood money. So I think it is important. Let's call it for what it is. We get a bit terrified or petrified about policies that could even be, let's say, in the short run, be detrimental to growth or any of these things. I don't know if you ever had medicine that you liked. You understand what I'm saying? You don't. I don't think you've ever had an operation that you liked. I don't think you've ever been to a dentist and you sort of say, this is really good. All those things are done because of a long-term issue. And I think we are glad, even though it's very painful to be at a dentist or to take whatever medicine you shouldn't, that is supposed to help you, or that operation. I mean, it's even negative in terms of cash flow. But we do it gladly because we know the end point. So my point is, don't worry about the growth. The question is, we are at a bifurcation, right? So we are, to use Robert Frost's poem, right? Two paths diverge in the woods, right? And as eventually at the end it says, I could take this one and the other one, and I took the least traveled one, and it has made all the difference. I want us to be saying that.
What are some of the measures that CBK has put in place? You mentioned earlier that you'll ensure that they have enough money, of course, when they come into exchange. But what are some of the measures that you've put in place in relation to this? Then number two, this thing about illicit flows in the country and corruption, could this be a measure, demonetization, could this be a measure that would have been exercised a little bit earlier? And do you believe that ultimately this would be the solution to eradicate it altogether going forward? Then number two, the image, number three.
Be nice.
A final one. A final one. And number three, about the currency again. Again, the public participation. I think when you read through Twitter, when you're talking to individuals, of course, on the streets, they're saying, why exactly, even if we picked the KICC, well, it still has the image of the former president. There are concerns, of course, in relation to this. Thank you.
Fine. Let me make it very. Yeah, careful. Fine.
Yeah, very two quick ones. So 217.6 million units of the 1,000 shillings note. The second part was how much of these are you looking to purge? How many are you looking to get rid of in terms of the targets?
100% of
How many do you feel are illicit as part of it again, so that the whole amount is not coming back to the system?
It's not that every transaction, or let's say every bill, does not mean that it is involved in illicit transaction. Because I would just tell you that maybe you go in your pocket here, it's maybe 1,000 that has been there for 3 weeks. You haven't broken it. We all know what happens when you break 1,000. You spend it. You go into the Brenda problem, right? Spending it because you have broken the thing, right? As we say in Kenya, breaking the thing. But anyway, so the point is, it's not that all those bills are involved in some sort of illicit transaction. But there is a fair amount of illicit transactions in those currencies. And that's why we want to withdraw every one of them. So it is 100%. That's the idea. All of them. We want them back, all of them. So that is really the idea here. And at the end of it, the ones that, and if people actually, if you are okay in terms of your transactions and all those other things, then you bring it back. If you are not okay, meaning you are sitting on it and you do not, again, use a Kenyanism, you do not know how the money came to you, right? Then it's fine, it becomes paper, you know? It's fine if it becomes paper, so come October 1, it will be paper, it will be worthless. So I will just cross it from my list. So I think it's clear. The questions from Brenda, you see, Brenda, I really don't think I can convince anybody. Again, it goes back to the question that was raised earlier. You know, there's a lot of conspiracy out there, right? Or conspiracy theories that we didn't do this, we should have done this. This was not contemplated in the Constitution. This was, my view is this, my view is this. You know, all those discussions don't have a place in this thing. If you really think that we did the wrong thing, sure, let's go to court. And somebody will determine it. But I'm just telling you, in terms of the way we operated, in every aspect of the design, we can prove that what we did is appropriate and consistent with the law. That is what we are submitting. And in terms of whether we will convince everybody, absolutely not. This is not the first time that we have not convinced everybody. By the way, my favorite example here is the Stawi thing, right? Remember Stawi? You were here when we talked about it. And then people went out and put out all sorts of articles about why the governor should not be in Gikomba, you know, and all those other things, and why really I shouldn't even be involved in Stawi and all those other things. Forgetting that the objective of Stawi was really dealing with a fundamental problem for us, including financial inclusion, meaning those people need to be involved in particular ways. And that is part of the central bank's mandate. So I don't think I convinced everybody. And I don't think I'll ever convince everybody. 10 years from now, we'll still be arguing about this. I'm sure we will. But I think in terms of the applicable laws, we followed them. And in terms of the objective, it's clear we did them. And as I said, we did participate, we did do the public participation. Maybe you didn't, you ignored it, like everything else. And we put out quite often our things that we are doing. For instance, we did the KMRC, right? guidelines or regulations. And we put them on our website and announced, not just on our website, we announced quite broadly and sent it to all of you that, we would want your comments. Now, if you don't comment, well, that's okay. You understand? We cannot extract it forcefully from an opinion. So I want to be clear that we are doing the right thing. The law, submitting to it, 100%. But I know also that will never convince everybody. But I think they need to appreciate that, yes, that we actually can convince anybody if they want to have an appropriate conversation, sort of a level-headed conversation. Now, there was a second part, I don't remember, the middle part. Yeah, so the commercial banks, we had a conversation with them today, as you said, as I told you. And I'm going to have meetings with other. Today is just, I need to explain to them what we are doing. So today is a communication day. That is really the point. And that's why we needed to talk to you, because we are talking to the public as well, right? And let you feel the coin, the currency and all those other things. But I think the point here is that, they were here at 9 o'clock. And I can assure you that we didn't have the new generation banknotes in their branches. So it would take a few days to get it to every single branch. Remember, we are not just doing the local one around the corner. We are going to even, the farthest reaches of our country, meaning all the branches around the country should have currencies in the next, new generation currencies in the next few days. That's the first in terms of the to-dos, if you see what I mean. That's the priority. And we should, we have a plan and we'll execute. So we shouldn't be worried about that. By the way, at times we do these things which appear impossible. In one day we can move, let's say, election ballots, all around the country. You understand what I'm saying? And also return them, or exams. So I'm just making the point that it is not as difficult as it sounds. There is a mechanism, and it will be useful for this. So I hope that ends it. I appreciate this conversation. And again, my commitment to you is maybe in the next few weeks, we've been having press conferences every 2 months. Every 2 months. Maybe what we need to do is to have more regular ones. So maybe in about 3 weeks, we should have a conversation and talk about this and maybe other things. But I think the point here is that I definitely put a high premium or a high price on communicating with you and really see whether we can communicate to also the public, because it's important for them to appreciate what is going on and the importance of what is going on. So thank you very much. Have a very good day.
So thank you very much. Kiawa is here, Mercy is here, Liz is here, somewhere there, and Esther is here. They will escort you out. Thank you very much. See you guys next time.